The whisper had traveled through Seoul's elite circles like poison. Jung Min-ho's size was so devastating that women walked away after seeing him once, unable to face the reality of his body. Heiresses gasped behind their hands. Chaebol daughters turned down family introductions. Even the most experienced companions in Gangnam refused his offers, no matter the price. He'd given up trying years ago, surrounding himself with wealth and power instead of warmth, accepting that some men were destined to live alone. Until a confident black woman stepped into his private lounge, heard the warning from trembling lips beside her, looked directly into his eyes, and smiled. Didn't pale. Didn't excuse herself. Didn't flee. For the first time in half a decade, Jung Min-ho felt something he thought he'd buried forever. Possibility. Welcome to Seoul K-Diary, beautiful people. Don't forget to hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that celebrate our love. Jasmine Wright had only been in Seoul for 6 weeks when her colleague dragged her to Midnight, the kind of exclusive club where the velvet ropes stayed closed unless you knew the right people. Her friend Chin had somehow secured them entry, refusing to explain her connections, insisting only that Jasmine needed a proper welcome to the city. That booth in the corner, a woman whispered, leaning close enough that Jasmine could smell the champagne on her breath. She wore diamonds that probably cost more than a car. See the man sitting alone? Don't even think about approaching him. Jasmine followed the woman's subtle gesture. The VIP section sat elevated, separated from the main floor by what looked like an invisible barrier of fear and respect. The man commanded attention without trying. Tall, impeccably dressed in tailored black, with sharp features that could have been carved from stone. He sat utterly still, dark eyes scanning the crowd with the bored expression of someone who'd seen everything and been disappointed by most of it. 6 bodyguards formed a perimeter around him, keeping everyone at a careful distance. Why wouldn't I? Jasmine asked, curiosity overtaking common sense. The woman laughed, the sound bitter and knowing. Jung Min-ho. Let's just say he's blessed and cursed in equal measure. Too much of a man for any woman to handle. She dropped her voice even lower. I personally know 4 women who tried. None of them lasted past the first night. Word is he's built like nature made a mistake. Chin returned with drinks, catching the tail end of the conversation. Oh, you're talking about the gangster with the legendary problem. Girl, my hairdresser's cousin dated him briefly. One look and she was out the door. Never spoke about it again. Jasmine's eyebrows lifted. She'd heard crude gossip before, overheard locker room talk that made her roll her eyes, but this felt different. These women spoke with genuine trepidation, mixed with fascination, like discussing a myth that turned out to be devastatingly real. So he's alone because he's apparently too big? Jasmine kept her voice neutral. That's the saddest thing I've heard all week. That's life, the diamond-wearing woman countered with a shrug. Some people are meant to be alone. Biology isn't always fair. Jasmine studied him again. Jung Min-ho hadn't moved, but something about his posture suggested profound isolation. The way he gripped his glass, the set of his jaw, the careful blankness of his expression. Loneliness that had calcified into acceptance. Maybe it was the 2 glasses of wine making her bold. Maybe it was remembering her ex's parting words that she was too much woman, too curvy, too outspoken, too everything he could handle. Or maybe Jasmine was simply exhausted by people making decisions based on fear rather than possibility. She set down her glass and stood. Jazz, what are you doing? Chen's eyes went wide with alarm. Something either brilliant or incredibly stupid. Jasmine smoothed down her emerald dress and walked toward the VIP section before courage could abandon her. The bodyguards shifted immediately, moving to intercept. She stopped just outside their range, lifting her chin to meet Jung Min-ho's gaze directly. His eyes locked onto hers. Dark, assessing, startled. You've been staring, Jasmine called out, her voice carrying despite the pulsing music. Thought I'd save you the effort and come introduce myself properly. A ripple of shock moved through the nearby crowd. Nobody approached Jung Min-ho without an explicit invitation. Ever. His expression remained controlled, but something flickered behind those obsidian eyes. Interest, perhaps. Or disbelief. You don't know who I am, he said, his voice carrying an edge of warning. Jung Min-ho. Crime boss. Apparently Seoul's most eligible bachelor with a reputation that sends grown women running. Jasmine crossed her arms, the movement emphasizing her curves in the dress that fit like a second skin. I'm Jasmine, marketing consultant, and I was raised not to judge anything before experiencing it firsthand. The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. You should be more careful with your choices. Probably. But where's the fun in careful? Silence stretched between them, charged with challenge and curiosity. The club pounded around them, but in this suspended moment, everything else faded. His bodyguards exchanged uncertain glances. This had never happened before. Jung Min-ho set down his glass with deliberate precision. When he stood, Jasmine understood viscerally why women found him overwhelming. He was easily 6'4", built like he trained for violence daily because he probably did. Power radiated from him in waves, not threatening exactly, but undeniable. He gestured to the booth. Sit. It wasn't phrased as a request, but Jasmine had started this game, and she wasn't about to fold now. She slipped past the bodyguards, hyper-aware of his gaze tracking her every movement, and slid into the plush seating across from him. Up close, Jung Min-ho was breathtaking. Sharp jawline, full lips, and eyes that saw too much. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow, the only flaw on an otherwise perfect face. You heard the rumors, he stated flatly. I did. And you're here anyway. Jasmine met his stare without wavering. I'm here because you looked like you could use some company, and because I'm tired of letting other people's fears dictate my choices. Something cracked in his carefully maintained expression. Genuine surprise. Raw and unfiltered. Women don't approach me anymore, Min-ho said quietly, his voice dropping low enough that only she could hear. They hear the stories and decide I'm not worth the risk. That I'm some kind of freak of nature. They're lost then. You don't understand what you're saying. Then help me understand, Jasmine leaned forward, her voice softening. Because right now, all I see is a man who's been judged and rejected for something completely beyond his control. And that's not right. Min-ho's jaw tightened. For a long moment he said nothing, his gaze searching her face like he was trying to determine if she was real or another elaborate joke the universe had decided to play on him. I don't do this, he finally said. Talk to strangers about personal things. Neither do I usually. Guess we're both breaking patterns tonight. The ghost of a genuine smile touched his lips, transforming his entire face from intimidating to devastating. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish, Jasmine. Little bit of both, probably. Keeps life interesting. He poured whiskey into a second glass and slid it across the table. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, and Jasmine felt electricity shoot straight up her arm. From the way his eyes darkened, he'd felt it too. Why Seoul? Min-ho asked. Needed a change. Bad breakup, corporate job that was killing my soul, and a persistent feeling that New York had nothing left to offer me. She sipped the whiskey, smooth and undoubtedly expensive. Your turn. How does someone become a crime boss before 35? Inheritance. My father built the organization. When he was killed, I took over. His tone indicated the story was far more complicated and violent than one sentence could convey. It's not a life I chose. It's a life I was born into and trained for since I could walk. But you're good at it. I'm good at surviving. Jasmine studied him, seeing past the dangerous reputation to the exhausted man beneath. Surviving isn't the same as living. No, Min-ho agreed softly. It's not. They talked for over 2 hours. The club pulsed around them, bodies moving on the dance floor, But inside their booth, time moved differently. He asked about her work, her family back in New York, her favorite discoveries in Seoul. She asked about his life outside the organization, what he did when he wasn't being Jung Min-ho, the untouchable boss, whether he'd ever imagined a different path. He was funny, she discovered. Dry wit delivered with perfect timing. He listened intently, really listened, in a way Jasmine hadn't experienced in years. And beneath the careful control, she sensed a desperate loneliness that mirrored her own. I should go, Jasmine finally said, though everything in her wanted to stay. My friend is probably losing her mind by now. Min-ho's expression shuddered immediately. Of course. She hesitated, then grabbed a cocktail napkin and scrawled her number across it. In case you want to continue not doing this. Talking to strangers, I mean. He took the napkin like it was made of something precious and irreplaceable. The women who ran. Jasmine held his gaze. I'm not them. Whatever you're worried about, we can figure it out together if we get there. One step at a time. You don't know what you're offering. Maybe not. But I'd like the chance to find out. She slid out of the booth, then paused. You deserve someone who doesn't run, Min-ho. Everyone does. She walked away before he could respond, heart pounding, acutely aware of his eyes burning into her back the entire way. Chin grabbed her the second she cleared the VIP section. Girl, what just happened? You were up there for hours. I thought I was going to have to send a search party. I think. Jasmine glanced back one more time. Min-ho still stood by the booth, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decode. I think I just did something that's going to completely change my life. Good change or bad change? Honestly, I have no idea. For days later, Jasmine's phone buzzed during a client presentation. She ignored it, continuing her explanation of brand positioning strategies to a room full of executives who looked bored despite her best efforts. But when it buzzed again immediately after, she glanced down discreetly. Unknown number. Asterisk, you said one step at a time. Dinner tomorrow night. I'll send a car, asterisk. Her heart kicked hard against her ribs. She hadn't actually expected him to contact her. Part of her had wondered if that night had been some kind of fever dream. Another message arrived. Asterisk, this is Min-ho, in case that wasn't clear. I'm not good at this, asterisk. Jasmine bit back a smile and texted back quickly during a break in the presentation. Time and place? Asterisk, I'll send a car at 7. Wear something comfortable, asterisk. Should I be concerned about the mystery? Asterisk, always. But not tonight, asterisk. She stared at her phone, butterflies rioting in her stomach. Chen's voice echoed in her head from their post-club debrief. Asterisk, girl, you're playing with fire. That man is dangerous, asterisk. Maybe. But Jasmine had been cold for too long. The car that arrived at 7 was a sleek black Mercedes with windows tinted dark enough to be illegal. The driver was professional and silent, navigating through Seoul's glittering streets to an address in Gangnam she didn't recognize. They stopped in front of a modern high-rise that screamed wealth and power. The driver opened her door with practiced efficiency. Top floor, Miss Wright. Mr. Young is expecting you. Jasmine's pulse jumped. His home. He'd invited her to his actual home. The private elevator required a key card the driver provided. It rose smoothly, opening directly into a penthouse that stole her breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased Seoul's skyline in every direction, the city lights glittering like scattered diamonds. The decor was minimalist, but clearly expensive. Black, white, and chrome. Everything screamed power and control, yet somehow felt empty. Like a showroom, not a home where someone actually lived. You came. Min-ho emerged from what looked like a kitchen, and Jasmine's brain short-circuited. He'd traded his designer suit for dark jeans and a simple black t-shirt that clung to a physique that made her mouth go dry. Muscular but lean. Tattoos she hadn't noticed before peeked from under his sleeves, intricate designs that probably had violent meanings she couldn't begin to guess. You invited me, Jasmine managed. She'd worn jeans and a soft coral sweater, taking his comfortable instructions seriously. Though I wasn't entirely sure you meant it. I never say things I don't mean. He gestured to the dining table, already set for two with what looked like homemade food. I cooked. Hope you're hungry. You cook. Don't sound so surprised. Even criminals have to eat. But his tone was teasing, and Jasmine relaxed slightly. Dinner was Korean barbecue. Beef, vegetables, rice, and an array of banchan that he'd clearly prepared himself. They ate and talked, the conversation flowing as naturally as it had in the club. Min-ho was more open here in his private space. He told her about growing up in this world, about the things he'd done to survive that still haunted him, about the loneliness of being feared rather than known. Why did you really invite me here? Jasmine asked as they moved to the couch after dinner, the city lights twinkling below them like a living painting. Min-ho was quiet for a long moment. Because you looked at me like I was human. Not a rumor. Not a monster. Not a cautionary tale. Just a man. You're just a man, Min-ho. I'm not. His voice dropped. You need to understand what you're getting into before this goes any further. Before I let myself hope for something I can't have. Then tell me. He stood, pacing to the windows with his back to her. The rumors about why women leave aren't exaggerated. If anything, they understate the situation. I'm aware that my body is intimidating in ways most men aren't. I've had women take one look and refuse to even try. The ones who did try couldn't manage it. He exhaled roughly. The last woman I was with ended up in pain. Humiliated. And I felt like an actual monster. Jasmine's chest tightened at the raw vulnerability in his voice. I stopped trying after that, Min-ho continued, his shoulders tense. Accepted that physical intimacy wasn't going to be part of my life. That I'd spend whatever years I have left alone because my body is simply too much for anyone to accept or accommodate. He turned to face her, his expression carefully blank. So if you're looking for something physical, I need you to know I can't give you that. Not without causing you pain. And I won't do that to you or anyone else. Jasmine stood and crossed to him slowly, deliberately. Look at me, she said softly. He did. And she saw the fear hidden beneath his control. Fear of rejection. Fear of being too much. Fear of hurting someone he cared about. She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. His hand dwarfed hers, and she felt the strength in his grip, carefully measured and controlled. First of all, Jasmine said firmly, I'm a grown woman with complete agency. If and when we get to that point, it'll be my choice. My decision. Not something forced on me. Second, she continued, I'm not those other women. I'm curvy. I'm built differently than they were. I'm built to handle things others can't. She squeezed his hand. And third, sex isn't everything. If that's all someone wants from you, they don't deserve you anyway. Min-ho stared at her like she'd spoken a language he'd never heard before. You're lonely, Jasmine continued softly. I'm lonely. Maybe we can be lonely together for a while and see what happens. No pressure. No expectations. Just two people getting to know each other. You make it sound simple. Maybe it is. Maybe everyone else has been overthinking it, including you. He lifted their joined hands, pressing his lips to her knuckles in an old-fashioned gesture that made her heart skip. You're extraordinary, he whispered. I'm really not. I'm just tired of letting fear make all my decisions. Min-ho pulled her closer, and Jasmine's breath caught. This close she could smell his cologne, something dark and woodsy. Could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Could feel the heat radiating from his body. If we do this, he said quietly, if we try this, I need you to promise you'll tell me if it's too much. If I'm too much. The moment it becomes that way. If you promise the same. Because Min-ho, I come with my own baggage. My own too muchness that my ex couldn't handle. Deal. He leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When their lips met, Jasmine felt the world tilt on its axis. The kiss was gentle at first, controlled, like he was afraid she'd shatter. So she fisted her hands in his shirt and pulled him closer, deepening the kiss, showing him she wasn't fragile or afraid. Min-ho groaned, his arms coming around her, and for the first time Jasmine understood what all the whispered warnings had been about. Even through their clothes she could feel him. And yes, the rumors were accurate. But instead of fear, she felt intrigue, challenge, and a deep aching desire to be the woman who didn't run. They kissed until breathing became necessary, then stood there with foreheads pressed together, both trembling slightly. "Stay," Min-ho whispered. "Not for anything physical. Just stay. Talk to me. Let me fall asleep knowing someone's here who doesn't see me as a monster." Jasmine's heart cracked open. Okay. They lay on his massive bed fully clothed, talking until the city lights blurred and their voices grew drowsy. Min-ho held her like she was something precious, his body curved protectively around hers. And for the first time in months, Jasmine felt completely safe. Just before sleep claimed her, she heard him whisper against her hair. "Don't run. Please don't run from me." "I'm not going anywhere," she promised. But neither of them knew how severely that promise would be tested. Jasmine had never experienced courtship like this before. Min-ho didn't just text casually. He called every morning and every night, wanting to hear her voice, asking about her day in detail. He sent cars to pick her up after work, taking her to hidden restaurants and quiet parks where they could be anonymous and alone. He learned her schedule, her favorite coffee order, the subjects that made her eyes light up with passion. And he was patient. Painfully, beautifully patient. They kissed often, long and deep until she felt dizzy. He touched her constantly, hands skimming her curves, fingers tangling in her hair. But he never pushed for more, always pulling back before things went too far, his control ironclad and frustrating. It was driving Jasmine slowly insane. "He's courting you like some kind of Victorian gentleman," Chin observed over lunch 3 weeks later. "Which is sweet in theory, but girl, you're about to climb him like a tree. I can see it in your face." "It's not that simple," Jasmine protested, poking at her bibimbap. "He's terrified of hurting me. Like, genuinely terrified. So show him he won't." "How exactly?" Chen gave her a knowing look. "You're a grown woman. Seduce him. Take the lead. Show him you can handle whatever he's worried about." Jasmine laughed, but the idea took root and grew. Maybe Min-ho needed her to take control, to show him that she wasn't afraid and wasn't going to break. That evening she showed up at his penthouse unannounced. The security had long since been instructed to let her through without question, another sign of how much trust Min-ho had placed in her. She found him in his home gym, shirtless and covered in sweat, pounding a heavy bag with methodical precision that spoke of years of training. Jasmine's mouth went dry. She'd known he was built, had felt the muscles beneath his clothes. But seeing him like this, power barely contained, tattoos on full display across his back and ribs, raw strength in every movement, made heat pool low in her belly. Min-ho caught sight of her in the mirror and stopped mid-punch, chest heaving. "Jasmine. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." She walked toward him slowly, deliberately. "I wanted to see you." His eyes darkened as he took in her appearance. Fitted jeans, a low-cut top that showcased her curves, heels that brought her closer to his height. "You should have called first. I'm covered in sweat right now. You're really not complaining worthy at all." Min-ho grabbed a towel, wiping his face and chest with quick efficiency. "I'm disgusting." "You're really not." Jasmine stopped in front of him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. "Min-ho, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Are you attracted to me?" His jaw tightened visibly. "You know I am. You have to know that." "Then why do you keep pulling away? Why do you stop every time things start to get intense?" "Because I don't trust myself." His voice roughened. "Because when I touch you, all I want is more. And I'm terrified that more will hurt you in ways I can't take back." Jasmine placed her palm flat against his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her touch. "I'm not afraid of you," she said firmly. "You should be. Stop telling me what I should feel." She rose on her toes, bringing their faces inches apart. "I'm a grown woman. I know what I want. And I want you." Min-ho's control visibly frayed. His hands came up to grip her waist, fingers digging into her soft flesh. "Jasmine, kiss me. Really kiss me. Stop holding back like I'm going to shatter." Something snapped in him. He kissed her like he was starving, all pretense of gentleness abandoned. His tongue invaded her mouth, claiming and possessing. One hand fisted in her hair while the other palmed her ass, pulling her flush against him. And oh God, she felt him. Hard and massive against her stomach, exactly as intimidating as every warning had promised. But Jasmine didn't pull away. She pressed closer, rolling her hips, showing him she could handle it and wanted to try. Min-ho groaned into her mouth and lifted her effortlessly. Her legs wrapped around his waist as he carried her out of the gym, their lips never separating. He navigated blindly to his bedroom, kicking the door shut behind them with force. When he laid her on the bed, Jasmine expected him to continue, to finally let go of that ironclad control. Instead, he pulled back, breathing hard, his expression tortured. "We should stop." "No, we really should. I need you to understand." He broke off, visibly struggling. "It's going to take time. Patience. Preparation. I can't just." Jasmine sat up, understanding flooding through her. "Min-ho, look at me." When he did, she smiled softly. "I know. And I don't care. We'll figure it out together. Slowly, carefully, whatever it takes. You might change your mind when you see." "I won't. Others have. I'm not others." She pulled him down beside her, cupping his face. "I'm falling for you. All of you. And that includes the parts you think are too much or too difficult." Min-ho closed his eyes, a shudder running through his entire body. When he opened them again, they were suspiciously bright. "I don't deserve you. Lucky for you, I don't care about deserve. I care about want. And I want you, young Min-ho, exactly as you are." He kissed her again, softer this time but no less intense. They undressed slowly, learning each other's bodies with hands and lips and whispered words. Jasmine had been right about one thing. He was intimidatingly large everywhere, just as the rumors had promised. But she also saw his scars, the evidence of violence he'd endured and survived. And she kissed each one, showing him that all of him was acceptable and desired. What happened next was slow and careful and sometimes frustrating. There were moments when Min-ho stopped completely, fear overtaking desire. Moments when Jasmine had to breathe through discomfort and remind herself this was new territory for both of them. Moments when they laughed at the awkwardness, because what else could they do? But there were also moments of breathtaking intimacy. The way he looked at her like she'd hung the moon and stars. The way he touched her with reverent wonder, mapping every curve like he was memorizing her. The way he whispered her name like a prayer when their bodies finally connected fully. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real. And when it was over, when they lay tangled together with sweat-slicked skin and racing hearts, Min-ho pulled her close and said 4 words that changed everything. "Don't leave me. Please." Jasmine heard the fear beneath the request. The certainty that now she'd experienced the reality of him, she would do what everyone else had done. She pressed her lips to his racing heart. "I'm not going anywhere. I promise you." For the first time in his life, young Min-ho let himself believe it might be true. 6 weeks later, Jasmine woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and a heavy arm draped across her waist. She smiled, burrowing deeper into the warmth behind her. Min-ho's penthouse had become her second home, though neither of them had officially acknowledged it yet. Her toothbrush sat next to his in the bathroom. Her clothes hung in his closet. Her books cluttered his minimalist coffee table. You're awake. His sleep-roughened voice rumbled against her neck. How do you always know? Your breathing changes. He pressed a kiss to her shoulder. I pay attention to everything about you. That was an understatement. Jung Min-ho noticed everything. The way she bit her lip when anxious. How she hummed while working. Which side of the bed she preferred. What foods she reached for when stressed. He was attentive in ways that should have felt suffocating, but instead made her feel cherished. What time is it? Jasmine asked, already knowing she needed to get up soon. Early. Go back to sleep. Can't. I have a client presentation at 10. Min-ho's arm tightened possessively. Call in sick. I've already done that twice this month because someone kept me up all night. She turned in his embrace, finding his dark eyes already fixed on her. Even sleep-rumpled and unguarded, he was devastating. People are going to start asking questions. Let them. Min-ho, I don't want you to leave. His honesty was disarming as always. I know that's selfish, but every time you walk out that door, part of me is afraid you won't come back. Jasmine's heart squeezed. They'd come so far, but his fear of abandonment hadn't disappeared. If anything, it had intensified as he'd let her deeper into his life and heart. I always come back, she reminded him gently. For now. Forever, if you'd let me. Min-ho went very still. What? Jasmine hadn't meant to say it out loud, but now that she had, she wasn't taking it back. I love you. I'm in love with you. And I'm tired of pretending this is casual when we both know it stopped being casual the night we met. His expression was unreadable. You can't love me. Too late. Jasmine, you don't understand what you're saying. My life, my world, it's dangerous and violent. I've spent the last 6 weeks keeping you separate from that reality. But eventually you'll see all of it. Eventually. Eventually I'll see all of you. I know. She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. I'm not naive, Min-ho. I know what you do. Who you are. The violence you're capable of. And I love you anyway. You should run from me. But I won't. She kissed him softly. Now say it back. I know you feel it too. Min-ho's jaw clenched. For a moment she thought he might actually retreat, rebuild the walls she'd worked so hard to break down. Then he crushed her against him, his face buried in her neck. I love you, he said roughly, his voice breaking. God help me, I love you so much it terrifies me every single day. You're the only good thing in my life, Jasmine. The only thing that makes me feel human instead of like a monster. And I'm terrified I'll destroy you just by being near you. You won't. You don't know that. Yes, I do. She pulled back to look at him. Because you'd destroy yourself before you'd let anything happen to me. That's who you are. Min-ho kissed her then, deep and desperate and claiming. They made love as the sun rose over Seoul, slower and more familiar than that first night, but no less intense. He still trembled with the effort of control, still stopped periodically to make sure she was okay and comfortable. But Jasmine loved that about him. The careful consideration. The way he put her comfort above his own pleasure every single time. Afterward, as she rushed to get ready for work, Min-ho watched from the bed with an expression that made her stomach flutter with anticipation. Move in with me, he said suddenly. Jasmine froze, mascara wand halfway to her eye. What? You're here every night anyway. Move in officially. He sat up, the sheet pooling at his waist. I want to wake up with you every morning. Come home to you every night. I want this place to be ours, not just mine. Min-ho, that's huge. We've only been together for... I don't care about conventional timelines. I know what I want. And I want you here. Always. Jasmine's hands shook slightly. This was fast. Too fast by any normal standard. But nothing about their relationship had been normal from the beginning. I need to think about it, she said honestly. This is a big step. Disappointment flickered across his face before he masked it with practiced ease. Of course. Take your time. No pressure. But as she left for work, Jasmine knew her answer. She was just afraid of what it meant. The point of no return. Full commitment to a life that existed in shadows and danger. She was afraid of how desperately she wanted to say yes. That evening, Jasmine met Chin for dinner at their favorite Korean barbecue spot. Her friend took one look at her face and poured soju immediately. He asked you to move in, didn't he? Chin said, already knowing the answer. How did you? Girl, that man has been obsessed with you since the moment you sat down at his table. I'm honestly surprised he waited this long. Chin grilled meat with practiced efficiency. What did you say? That I'd think about it. Jasmine sighed, accepting the shot glass. And I want to say yes. That's the problem. Why is that a problem? Because it's crazy, Chin. We've barely been together 2 months. I don't even know his world, not really. He keeps me separate from it deliberately. What if I move in and realize I can't handle what he does? What if you spend your whole life playing it safe and miss out on the best thing that ever happened to you? Chin interrupted firmly. Jazz, I've known you for 3 years. I've never seen you this happy. This alive. This completely yourself. I'm scared. Of course you are. Love is terrifying. Chin squeezed her hand across the table. But from what you've told me, he's just as scared as you are. Probably more. That man has been rejected and abandoned for something completely beyond his control. And you showed up and didn't run. You think he's going to let you go easily. That's what worries me. What if I'm in too deep already? Honey, you've been in too deep since the night you walked up to his VIP section. The only question now is whether you're brave enough to admit it. Jasmine downed her soju, the burn centering her somehow. Chin was right. She'd already made her choice that first night. Everything since had just been confirmation. Her phone buzzed with a text from Min-ho. Where are you? Asterisk dinner with Chen. Why? Asterisk. Asterisk come to the penthouse when you're done. Please. Asterisk. The please got her. Min-ho never begged for anything. She texted back an affirmative and tried to focus on her meal, but anxiety coiled in her stomach like a living thing. An hour later, the car dropped her at his building. The penthouse was dark except for candles. Hundreds of them, creating a glowing pathway from the elevator to the living room. Min-ho? Jasmine called out, her heart pounding. He emerged from the shadows, dressed in all black, his expression intense and vulnerable. You said you needed time to think. I tried to give you that. I really did. He closed the distance between them. But I can't. I'm sorry. Every minute you're away, I'm terrified you'll realize you deserve better. That you'll choose safety over me. He took her hand, leading her to the couch. So I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to ask you again, and this time I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to make an informed decision. Jasmine's breath caught. Okay. Min-ho sat facing her, still holding her hand like it was his only anchor. My organization controls 70% of Seoul's underground economy. Drugs, weapons, protection, smuggling. If it's illegal and profitable, we're involved. His voice was flat, emotionless, but his hand trembled in hers. I've killed people, Jasmine. Ordered deaths. Done things that would make you physically sick if you knew the details. He continued before she could respond. I have enemies. Rival organizations. Ambitious lieutenants who want my position. Law enforcement that can't be bought. Being with me puts a target on your back. I've kept you hidden so far, kept you separate from that world. But if you move in, if we make this relationship public, that changes. You become a vulnerability they can exploit. Min-ho. I'm not done. His eyes burned into hers. I'm possessive. Jealous. I will want to know where you are at all times, who you're with. I'll put security on you whether you like it or not. I'll control aspects of your life, because that's the only way I can guarantee your safety. And I won't apologize for it, because keeping you alive matters more to me than keeping you happy. Jasmine absorbed this, seeing the raw honesty in his face. This was the real Jung Min-ho. The dangerous man beneath the careful exterior. Is that everything? She asked calmly. No. One more thing. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Jasmine's heart stopped completely. I'm not asking you to move in. I'm asking you to marry me. The world tilted sideways. What? In my world, marriage is protection. It's a declaration that you're mine, that you're untouchable. Anyone who hurts you answers to me personally, and everyone knows exactly what that means. He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring. Elegant and understated, exactly her style. But it's also real. I want you as my wife, Jasmine. I want forever. I want your name next to mine on everything that matters. This is insane, Jasmine whispered. I know. We barely know each other. I know you better than I've known anyone in my entire life. And you know me, the real me, in ways no one else ever has or ever will. People will think we're crazy. I don't care what people think. I only care what you think. He slid off the couch, kneeling before her. Jung Min-ho, the most powerful and feared man in Seoul's underworld, on his knees. Marry me. Let me protect you. Love you. Spend the rest of my life proving you didn't make a mistake that night in the club. Tears blurred Jasmine's vision. This was reckless, impulsive. Everything logical in her screamed to slow down. Think it through. Be sensible. But her heart, her fearless heart, already knew the answer. Yes, she breathed. Min-ho froze. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll move in. Yes to all of it. She cupped his face, tears spilling over. I love you. I choose you. Danger and all. He surged up, kissing her with bruising intensity. The ring box clattered to the floor, forgotten as he lifted her. Her legs wrapped around his waist instinctively. They made it to the bedroom somehow, shedding clothes in a frantic trail. That night was different. Urgent, desperate, like they were both trying to prove this was real, that the promises they'd made wouldn't evaporate with daylight. Min-ho made love to her with an intensity that left her breathless and trembling, whispering promises against her skin in Korean and English. Forever. Always. Mine. Later, as they lay tangled together in the candlelight, he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. How did you know my size? Jasmine asked, admiring the way it caught the light. I pay attention, he said again, kissing her knuckles. To everything about you. Jasmine snuggled into his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her cheek. She was engaged to a crime boss. After 2 months, Chin was going to lose her absolute mind. No regrets? Min-ho asked quietly, vulnerability creeping back into his voice. Not even one. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. Thank you. For what? For not running. For choosing me. For being brave enough to love a man like me. Jasmine tilted her head up to kiss him softly. Thank you for being patient enough to let me in. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, the ring catching the candlelight like a promise made solid. Neither of them noticed the shadow that moved past the penthouse windows 50 floors below, or the camera that had captured Jasmine's arrival. The secret was out. And danger was coming. For days later, Jasmine was reviewing marketing reports in Min-ho's home office when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello. Is this Jasmine, right? A woman's voice, heavily accented Korean, dripping with false sweetness. Yes. Who's calling? A friend. Someone who wanted to warn you before it's too late. Jasmine's blood chilled. Warn me about what? You need to leave Jung Min-ho. Walk away before he destroys you like he destroys everyone who gets close to him. Who is this? Someone who cares about you more than he ever could. He's using you, darling. You're just another conquest, another novelty. The moment he gets bored, he'll discard you like trash. Jasmine's grip tightened on her phone. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Ask him about Lee Soo-jin. Ask him what happened to the last woman who thought she was special to him. The line went dead. Jasmine stared at her phone, heart racing. Lee Soo-jin. The name meant nothing to her, But the malice in that woman's voice had been real and cutting. She tried to dismiss it as a prank, some jealous person trying to cause problems. But unease settled in her stomach and refused to leave. Min-ho had been careful about discussing his past relationships. Not evasive exactly, but guarded. Like he was protecting her from something. That evening when he came home, Jasmine was waiting in the living room. "Who's Lee Soo-jin?" she asked without preamble. Min-ho went completely rigid, his entire body tensing. "Where did you hear that name?" "Someone called me. A woman. Said I should ask you about her. About what happened to the last woman who thought she was special to you." He set down his briefcase with deliberate care, his jaw tight. "What else did she say?" "That you're using me. That the novelty will wear off." She crossed her arms. "But I don't care about her opinion. I care about yours." "Who is she?" Min-ho was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city lights like they held answers. Soo-jin was someone I tried to have a relationship with 4 years ago. Before I stopped trying altogether. What happened? She was beautiful. Well-connected. Her family had business ties to my organization, so on paper it made sense. His voice was flat, emotionless. But she couldn't handle me physically. She tried, I'll give her that. But after a few months she started making excuses to avoid intimacy. Avoiding me altogether. I ended it before the situation could become more humiliating for both of us. That doesn't sound like something worth warning me about. That's not the whole story. Min-ho turned to face her. Soo-jin became obsessed after I ended things. Convinced herself that I was the problem, that I'd ruined her somehow. She started spreading rumors, exaggerating the stories about me. Trying to sabotage any woman I showed interest in afterward. She's the reason the whispers about me became so widespread and dramatic. Jasmine absorbed this information carefully. Is she dangerous? Vindictive? Absolutely. Dangerous. He hesitated. She has connections. Resources. Money. If she knows about you, and clearly she does, she'll try everything in her power to drive you away from me. She can try all she wants. Min-ho crossed to her, gripping her shoulders firmly. Jasmine, I'm serious. Soo-jin is unstable. Obsessive. If she sees you as a threat to whatever fantasy she's built in her head, there's no telling what she might do. I'm not afraid of some jealous ex-girlfriend. You should be. In my world, jealousy kills people. The gravity in his tone sent chills down her spine. What are you saying? I'm saying I need to handle this situation tonight. And I need you to stay here behind security until I do. Min-ho, please. His eyes were desperate, almost panicked. Just this once, don't fight me on this. Let me protect you the way I need to. Jasmine wanted to argue, to insist she could handle herself. But the genuine fear in his face stopped her cold. Okay, but you come back to me safely. Whatever you have to do, you come back. Always, he promised. He kissed her fiercely, then was gone. Jasmine stood alone in the penthouse, the ring heavy on her finger, and wondered if she'd just made a terrible mistake trusting him to handle this alone. Min-ho returned just before dawn, his knuckles bruised and bloody, his expression grim and exhausted. He found Jasmine curled on the couch where she'd been unable to sleep and pulled her into his arms without a word. Is it handled? She asked quietly. It's handled. She won't bother you again. I made absolutely sure of it. What did you do? What I had to. He buried his face in her hair. She won't be a problem anymore. You have my word on that. Jasmine wanted to ask more, wanted details. But the exhaustion and something darker in his voice stopped her. Whatever he'd done, it had cost him something. So she just held him, offering comfort without words or judgment. I'm sorry, Min-ho whispered hoarsely. This is what I meant. This is the life you're signing up for. Threats appearing out of nowhere. Violence. Me disappearing in the middle of the night to handle problems in ways you're better off not knowing about. I know. Most women wouldn't accept that reality. I'm not most women. Jasmine pulled back to look at him. But Min-ho, You have to trust me enough to tell me when there's danger coming. Don't shut me out trying to protect me. Let me make informed decisions about my own safety. Even if those decisions put you at risk? Even then. We're partners now, or we will be. That means we face things together, not you shouldering everything alone. Something shifted in his expression. Relief mixed with wonder and disbelief. I don't deserve you. You keep saying that. I'm starting to think you enjoy playing the martyr. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Maybe I just can't believe you're real. That you're actually here and staying. I'm real. I'm here. And I'm staying. She kissed him softly. Now come to bed. You look like you've been through hell. Just a mild version of it. They went to bed as the sun rose over Seoul, tangled together as the city woke below them. Jasmine tried to sleep, but her mind raced. Sujin was handled, Min-ho had said. But for how long? And how many other enemies would crawl out of the shadows once their engagement became public knowledge? She was in this now. All the way in. And there was no going back. 3 weeks later, Jasmine had just finished a client meeting when she noticed him. A man in his 40s, expensive suit, watching her from across the coffee shop courtyard. When their eyes met, he smiled pleasantly and approached. Miss Wright. I'm Kang Dae-young. I was hoping we could talk. Every instinct screamed danger. About what? About Jung Min-ho and the choice you've made to involve yourself with him. His smile remained pleasant, but his eyes were cold. I represent certain parties who have concerns about your relationship. I don't know what you're talking about. Please. We both know you're engaged to him. The ring is quite distinctive. He gestured to her left hand. I'm not here to threaten you, Miss Wright. Quite the opposite. I'm here to offer you a way out before it's too late. I don't need a way out. Not yet. But you will. He handed her a business card. When you realize what he truly is, what he's capable of, what he's done, call me. We can protect you. Give you a new life far from his reach. Who do you work for? People who want to see Jung Min-ho removed from power. And you, Miss Wright, could be the key to making that happen. Jasmine's blood ran cold. You want me to betray him. I want you to save yourself. He's using you, surely you can see that. A man like him doesn't love. He possesses. He controls. And when he's done with you or you become inconvenient, you'll simply disappear. You don't know anything about him. Jasmine's voice shook with anger. Or about me. I know he's a monster responsible for dozens of deaths. I know his organization traffics in human misery and suffering. And I know that women who get too close to him tend to disappear or end up dead. Kang's expression hardened. You're not special, Miss Wright. You're a liability he'll eventually need to eliminate. Get away from me. Keep the card. You'll need it sooner than you think. He walked away, leaving Jasmine trembling with rage and fear. She called Min-ho immediately. He answered on the first ring. A man just approached me, she said, her voice shaking. Kang Dae-young. Said he represents people who want to take you down. Tried to recruit me to betray you. Silence on the other end. Then, where are you right now? Outside the coffee shop on Gangnam Boulevard. Walking to my car. Stay exactly where you are. I'm sending security immediately. Don't move until they arrive. Min-ho, what's happening? War. His voice was ice cold. And they just made you a direct target. They just declared war on me by approaching you. 2 black SUVs arrived within minutes, disgorging men in dark suits who surrounded her like a human shield. They escorted her to Min-ho's penthouse with military precision, their presence drawing stares from everyone they passed. Min-ho was waiting when she arrived, pacing like a caged animal. He pulled her into his arms the moment she cleared the door, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I'm okay, Jasmine assured him, though her hands were still shaking. You're not okay. They know about you. They know exactly who you are and what you mean to me. They're using you as a weapon against me. He pulled back, his expression fierce and terrifying. This changes everything. What do you mean? We're moving up the wedding. This week. Once you're legally my wife, You're untouchable under our laws and customs. And I'm tripling your security detail effective immediately. Min-ho, that's extreme. They threatened you. His control cracked, voice rising. They approached you in broad daylight in public because they want me to know they can reach you whenever they want. This is a message, Jasmine. And I'm sending one back that's much louder. She'd never seen him like this. Completely unraveled. Desperate and dangerous in equal measure. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, we'll do whatever you think is best. I should send you away. Back to America. Somewhere safe where they can't find you or reach you. No. Jasmine gripped his face, forcing him to look at her. I'm not leaving. We faced this together, remember? That was the promise we made. If something happens to you because of me, it won't. You won't let it. She kissed him firmly. I trust you with my life, Min-ho. His arms banded around her again, and she felt him shaking. This powerful, dangerous man terrified of losing her. We'll get married Saturday, he said into her hair, his voice muffled. Private ceremony. Just us and necessary witnesses. I'm not giving them time to plan anything or make another move. Saturday. That was 3 days away. Yes. And then I'm ending this threat. Whatever it takes. Whoever I have to eliminate. Jasmine heard the promise and the threat in his voice. People were going to die because of her, because someone had made the fatal mistake of using her to hurt him. She should have been horrified. Should have been reconsidering everything. Instead, she felt safe. Because Jung Min-ho would burn the entire city down before he let anyone take her from him. And God help her, she loved him even more for it. Saturday morning, Jasmine stood in front of a full-length mirror, barely recognizing herself. The wedding dress was simple but elegant. Ivory silk that hugged her curves before flowing to the floor. But it was beautiful and perfect. Jin had helped her get ready, tears streaming down her face the entire time despite her best efforts. I can't believe you're actually doing this, Jin said, adjusting Jasmine's veil with shaking hands. For days ago, you were running marketing campaigns. Now you're marrying the most dangerous man in Seoul. I know it's crazy. Crazy doesn't even begin to cover it. But Jin smiled, squeezing her shoulders. But I've also never seen you this certain about anything in your life. So if this is what you want, then I'm here for it. Jasmine touched the ring on her finger, soon to be joined by a wedding band. I love him, Jin. More than I knew was possible. Then let's get you married. The ceremony took place in Min-ho's penthouse, officiated by a judge who clearly owed him significant favors. Only a handful of people attended. Jin, Min-ho's second-in-command Park Jin-woo, and 6 bodyguards stationed at every entrance and exit. But when Min-ho turned to watch Jasmine walk toward him, none of that mattered anymore. He looked devastating in a black tuxedo, his hair styled back perfectly, the scar on his eyebrow somehow making him even more handsome. But it was his expression that stole her breath completely. Raw vulnerability. Wonder. And love so intense it made her knees weak. They'd written their own vows. Jasmine went first, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Min-ho, you terrified me when we first met. Not because of who you are or what you do, but because of how you made me feel. Like I'd been waiting my entire life for you without even knowing it. You've shown me that love isn't about safety or comfort. It's about being truly seen, being chosen, being brave enough to face the world together no matter what comes. She took a shaky breath. I promise to stand by your side through everything. I promise to never run, even when I'm scared. And I promise to love you, all of you, for the rest of my life. Min-ho's jaw clenched, his eyes suspiciously bright. When he spoke, his voice was rough with barely controlled emotion. Jasmine, you walked into my life when I'd completely convinced myself I was meant to be alone forever. You looked at me like I was human, not a monster or a cautionary tale or a rumor. You stayed when everyone else ran. You loved me when I couldn't love myself. He took her hands, his grip trembling. I promise to protect you with everything I have and everything I am. I promise to be worthy of the trust you've placed in me. And I promise that for as long as I'm breathing, you will never doubt that you are loved, cherished, and the most important thing in my entire world." The judge pronounced them husband and wife. Min-ho kissed her like she was oxygen, and he was drowning. Deep, claiming, reverent. When they finally broke apart, Jasmine was dizzy and breathless. "Mrs. Young," he murmured against her lips. "Mr. Young," she replied, smiling through tears. The small reception lasted barely an hour. They cut a simple but elegant cake, toasted with champagne, and accepted congratulations from their tiny wedding party. But Min-ho barely let Jasmine out of his arms, touching her constantly. Her waist, her hand, her hair. Like he was reassuring himself she was real and actually his. As the sun set, painting Seoul in gold and crimson, their guests departed. Finally alone, Min-ho scooped Jasmine into his arms effortlessly. "What are you doing?" she laughed. "Carrying my wife to bed." His eyes darkened with promise. "And keeping her there for the next 24 hours minimum. What about enemies and threats and—" "Can wait. Tonight nothing exists except us. Just you and me." He made love to her slowly, reverently, whispering against her skin that she was his wife, his love, his everything. They'd been intimate before many times. But this felt different. Sacred somehow. A claiming that went far beyond physical. Later, as they lay tangled together, Jasmine traced the tattoos on his chest. Dragons and Korean characters she still couldn't read. "What do they mean?" she asked softly. "This one," he touched a dragon wrapped around his ribs, "represents my father's legacy. The burden of leadership I inherited." His finger moved to characters over his heart. "This says survive. I got it after my first kill, to remind myself that survival was all that mattered in this world." "And now?" Jasmine whispered. "Now I'd change it to protect." He covered her hand with his, pressing it against his heart. "Because you matter more than survival. More than anything else in this world." Jasmine's throat tightened with emotion. "I'm going to get you killed, aren't I? By being your weakness." "You're not a weakness. You're my reason for everything." Min-ho pulled her closer. "And anyone who tries to use you against me will learn exactly why I've held power for 7 years. I'm not just dangerous, Jasmine. When it comes to you, I'm absolutely lethal." She should have been afraid of that intensity, that single-minded devotion. Instead, she felt cherished. Safe. Loved in a way that defied all logic and reason. "I don't regret this," she whispered. "Any of it. You might. When things inevitably get worse. They always do in my world. Then we'll face it together." She kissed his chest right over his heart. "I promise." Jasmine fell asleep in her husband's arms, the city lights twinkling outside like fallen stars, blissfully unaware of how soon that promise would be tested. Jasmine returned to work the following week with a security detail that made subtlety impossible. 2 men in dark suits shadowed her every move, standing outside her office, walking her to meetings, waiting outside bathroom doors. Her clients noticed immediately, whispers spreading through the marketing firm like wildfire. By lunch, the rumors had reached absurd proportions. She was dating a celebrity. She'd witnessed a major crime. She was in witness protection. The truth that she'd married Seoul's most powerful crime lord seemed too outlandish for anyone to guess. But during her afternoon strategy session, she noticed a young intern recording her on his phone. Not unusual in itself, except he wasn't part of her team, and he was focused on her security detail, not the presentation. After the meeting, Jasmine approached him directly. "Can I help you with something?" He startled badly, shoving his phone in his pocket. "No, sorry. Wrong conference room." He fled before she could respond. Unease prickled down her spine. She texted Min-ho immediately. * something feels off. Someone was filming my security team. *. His response was instant. Asterisk, trust your instincts. I'm sending additional security now. Asterisk. Within the hour, her detail had doubled. For men now, drawing even more attention and curious stares. Her supervisor called her into his office, clearly concerned about the situation. Jasmine deflected with vague explanations about a threatening ex-boyfriend, hating the lie but unable to tell the truth without exposing everything. That evening, Min-ho's driver picked her up instead of her usual security escort. The moment she slid into the car, she knew something was very wrong. "Where's Min-ho?" she demanded. "Handling a situation, Mrs. Young. He asked me to bring you home safely." The penthouse felt cavernous and empty without him. Jasmine tried to distract herself with work, reviewing marketing proposals, but anxiety coiled tighter with each passing hour. When her phone finally rang at midnight, she answered before the first ring finished. "I'm okay," Min-ho said immediately, reading her mind. "But I won't be home tonight." "What happened?" "Kang Dae-jung made his move. Tried to intercept one of my shipments. Killed 4 of my men in the process. We captured 3 of his people." She heard screaming in the background, distant but unmistakable. Her stomach turned. "I'm questioning them now. Min-ho? I know. I'm sorry you have to know about this part of my life." His voice was cold, emotionless, the tone of young Min-ho, the crime boss, not her husband. They were planning something bigger. "I need to find out what before more people die. Just come home safe," Jasmine whispered, her voice breaking. "Always. I love you. I love you too." The line went dead. Jasmine sat alone in the dark penthouse, listening to the city hum below, and faced the full reality of what she'd married into. Min-ho wasn't just dangerous in abstract terms. He tortured people, killed them. And he did it to protect his empire. And now, to protect her. She should have been horrified. Should have questioned everything. Instead, she went to their bedroom, climbed into his side of the bed where she could smell his cologne on the pillows, and waited for her husband to come home. Min-ho had barely spoken since returning from his interrogation session 3 days ago. He was distant, haunted, spending hours in his office making calls in rapid Korean she couldn't follow. When he did sleep, nightmares plagued him. Violent thrashing and words shouted in Korean that sounded like pleas or orders. Jasmine held him through it, offering silent comfort without demanding explanations. She didn't ask what he'd learned or what he'd done to get that information. Some things she was learning were better left unspoken in their world. But on Thursday evening, everything changed. Jasmine was in the university library researching for a campaign proposal when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. Against every instinct screaming at her to ignore it, she answered. "Mrs. Young." Kang Dae-jung's smooth voice made her blood freeze solid. "I hope married life is treating you well. How did you get this number?" "I have extensive resources." "Did your husband tell you what he did to my men? The ones he captured?" Jasmine's hand tightened on her phone. "I'm hanging up. Wait. I'm calling with an offer. A one-time opportunity to save innocent lives. I'm not interested in anything you're offering. Your husband has something that belongs to my employer. Financial records that could destroy our organization completely. Give them to me and this war ends. No more bloodshed. No more danger to you or anyone you care about." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play stupid, Mrs. Young. You live with him. You have access to his files, his computers, his safe. Find the records and deliver them to me by Saturday noon, or the consequences will be severe." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm offering you a choice. Help us and everyone stays safe. Refuse, and we'll be forced to apply pressure." His voice dropped dangerously low. "And Mrs. Young, we know about your friend Chin. Where she works, where she lives, her daily routine. We know about your colleagues, your clients, everyone you care about. They're all potential casualties in this war your husband started." Terror iced through her veins. "You wouldn't dare." "We would. We will. Unless you give us what we want." He paused deliberately. You have until Saturday at noon. I'll text you a location. Come alone. Bring the records. And everyone stays safe. Tell your husband, and people start dying. Starting with Chen. The line went dead. Jasmine stood frozen in the library, her entire world tilting dangerously. They were using her exactly as Min-ho had feared. As leverage. As a weapon against him. And now Chen was in danger because of her, because she'd fallen in love with the wrong man. She had two impossible choices. Tell Min-ho and risk Chen's life, or betray her husband to save her best friend. There was no good option. No right answer. That evening, Jasmine moved through dinner on autopilot, hyper-aware of Min-ho's scrutiny. He knew something was wrong. He always knew. But she deflected with claims of work stress and exhaustion from the rapid wedding. You're lying to me, he said quietly as they cleared the dishes. I'm not. Jasmine. He turned her to face him, his expression concerned. Talk to me. What happened today? She wanted to tell him everything. Wanted to collapse into his arms and let him handle it, fix it, make it all go away. But Kang's threat echoed in her mind. Asterisk, tell your husband and people start dying. Starting with Chin, asterisk. Nothing happened. I'm just tired. She forced a smile that felt wrong on her face. The wedding week was intense. I think it's all catching up with me now. Min-ho studied her for a long moment, clearly unconvinced. But he didn't push, just kissed her forehead gently. Go to bed early then. I have work to finish anyway. He disappeared into his office, and Jasmine stood alone in the kitchen, her wedding ring suddenly feeling like a shackle. She'd promised to never run, to face everything together. But how could she face this when telling the truth might get Jin killed? Friday night, Jasmine barely slept. She'd spent the entire day trying to figure out where Min-ho might keep important documents. She felt sick with guilt, but Chen's life hung in the balance. Around 1 a.m, she crept from their bedroom to his office. The door was locked, of course. But she'd watched him enter the code before her birthday. The lock disengaged with a soft beep that sounded deafening in the silent penthouse. Inside, the office was pristine. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk, wall-mounted monitors displaying security feeds from around the building. She approached the desk with shaking hands and tried the drawers. All locked except one. Inside was a USB drive labeled in Korean characters she couldn't read, and a manila folder with documents covered in numbers and names. Her hand hovered over them, guilt churning in her stomach. Looking for something? Jasmine spun around, heart in her throat. Min-ho stood in the doorway, still dressed in his work clothes, his expression unreadable. I couldn't sleep. Thought I'd grab a book from. Don't. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him with deliberate care. Don't lie to me. Not again. Tears burned her eyes, threatening to spill over. Jasmine, what did they threaten you with? His voice was calm, but fury simmered just beneath the surface. What did they say to make you sneak into my office in the middle of the night? I can't tell you. You're my wife. You can tell me anything and everything. Not this. If I tell you, people die. People I care about. People you care about. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by cold rage. They threatened Chin. Jasmine's silence was confirmation enough. Tell me everything, Min-ho ordered, his voice dropping to something dangerous. Right now. So she did. The phone call, Kang's demands, the Saturday deadline. Everything spilled out in a rush, her voice breaking as she explained why she'd been willing to betray him. When she finished, Min-ho was silent for a long, terrible moment. The fury she'd expected didn't come. Instead, he looked sad and disappointed. You thought I wouldn't protect her, he said quietly. You thought telling me would force them to act before I could stop them. I thought telling you would get her killed before you could do anything. So you were going to sacrifice yourself instead. Give them what they wanted and hope they'd keep their word, even though people like that never do. What else could I do? Min-ho crossed to her, pulling her into his arms despite her betrayal. You could have trusted me. Believed that I would find a way to save everyone without losing you in the process. I'm so sorry, Jasmine sobbed into his chest. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I know. It's okay. He stroked her hair, his voice gentle despite the steel beneath. But we're doing this my way now. And my way doesn't involve you walking into a trap alone. He guided her back to their bedroom, settled her on the bed, and made a series of phone calls in rapid Korean. Jasmine caught Chen's name several times, along with words that sounded like orders being given. What are you doing? She asked when he finally hung up. Chen is being moved to a secure location as we speak, along with anyone else you care about. Your supervisor, your favorite clients, your regular barista at the coffee shop. Anyone they might target is going into protection immediately. Min-ho, you can't just uproot people's lives like that. Watch me. His expression was implacable and final. They made you a target. Used you to try to destroy me. That's unforgivable. And now I'm going to show them exactly what happens when someone threatens my wife. What about the meeting tomorrow? Kong is expecting me. You're not going anywhere near that meeting. I am. He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. I need you to trust me now. Completely. Can you do that? Jasmine nodded, fresh tears spilling over. I'm sorry I didn't trust you from the beginning. You were trying to protect someone you love. I understand that completely. But his voice hardened. But Jasmine, never go behind my back again. We're a team. When you're threatened, you come to me immediately. Always. No matter what they say or threaten. Okay. I promise. He kissed her then, deep and claiming, like he was branding her soul with his touch. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with promise and deadly intent. Tomorrow this ends. Kang and everyone working with him will learn what it costs to threaten you. What are you going to do? What I should have done the moment they approached you the first time. His smile was cold, predatory, terrifying. I'm going to war. And I'm going to win. Jasmine shivered, but not from fear. From the absolute certainty in his voice. Jung Min-ho wasn't just powerful, he was inevitable and unstoppable. And he'd chosen her as his to protect. God help anyone who stood in his way. Saturday at 11:45, Jasmine watched through security feeds as Min-ho prepared to leave. He dressed in all black, weapons holstered beneath his jacket with practiced efficiency. His men surrounded him, a dozen of Seoul's most dangerous criminals, all loyal to their boss without question. Park Jin-woo, his second in command, approached her as Min-ho gave final orders. He'll come back, Jin-woo said in careful English. He always does. Always has. But what if this time? No what ifs. Boss has something to live for now. Someone to come home to. He won't take stupid risks anymore. Jin-woo smiled slightly. You've changed him. Made him more careful. More strategic. That's good for all of us. Before Jasmine could respond, Min-ho appeared. He pulled her aside, away from the others, and kissed her thoroughly despite their audience. Stay here, he ordered against her lips. Don't leave the penthouse. Don't answer calls from unknown numbers. Don't. I know. I'll be good. She gripped his jacket desperately. Just come back to me. Always. He pressed his forehead to hers. I love you, Mrs. Young. I love you too. She watched him leave, surrounded by armed men, walking into danger to protect her and everything she cared about. The penthouse felt impossibly silent once he was gone. Jin appeared from the guest room where she'd been staying since Min-ho's men had collected her in the middle of the night. He's really doing this. Going to war for you, Jin said softly. Apparently so. That man is crazy in love with you. You know that, right? Jasmine touched her wedding ring. I know. Good. Because if he wasn't, I'd be absolutely terrified right now instead of just regularly scared. They waited together, watching the security feeds that showed the penthouse entrance, the elevators, the street 50 floors below. Time crawled with agonizing slowness. Every minute felt like an hour. Then at 2:43, Jasmine's phone buzzed with a text from Min-ho. Asterisk, it's done. Coming home now, asterisk. Relief flooded through her so intensely she felt dizzy. He's okay, she told Chin. He's coming back. Chin hugged her tight. Thank God. But when Min-ho finally walked through the door an hour later, Jasmine knew immediately that something was very wrong. He was uninjured, no visible wounds, no blood on his clothes. But his expression was haunted, empty. His movements mechanical and distant. Min-ho. She approached carefully. What happened? It's handled. Kong and his people won't bother you again. Ever. That's good. That's what we wanted. Is it? He looked at her, and for the first time she saw doubt in his eyes. Real doubt and self-loathing. Do you know what I am now, Jasmine? What I had to do today to keep you safe. You protected us. Protected me and Chen and everyone else they threatened. I executed 7 people. His voice was flat, completely emotionless. Put bullets in their heads personally. Kong begged at the end. Said he had a family. Children waiting for him at home. I killed him anyway, without hesitation, because he threatened you. Because in that moment his life meant less to me than your safety. Jasmine's breath caught painfully. She'd known what he was capable of. But hearing it stated so bluntly, seeing the emptiness in his eyes, made it viscerally, terrifyingly real. I'm a monster, Min-ho continued, his voice hollow. And you're married to me. Tied to me legally and emotionally. You can't pretend anymore that I'm anything else. That I'm anything close to good. He was spiraling, she realized. Drowning in guilt and self-loathing, convinced she would finally see him clearly and run like everyone else had. So Jasmine did the only thing she could think of. She closed the distance between them and kissed him hard, claiming him completely. You're my husband, she said firmly when they broke apart. You're the man I chose. And yes, you did terrible things today. But you did them to protect innocent people from a war they didn't start. That doesn't make you a monster. It makes you human. Flawed and complicated and mine. Jasmine. No, listen to me. She gripped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. I'm not running. I'm not horrified. I'm grateful because Chin is alive. My colleagues are safe. And you came home to me like you promised. That's all that matters to me. Something cracked in his carefully controlled expression. I don't deserve you. Lucky for you, I don't care about deserve. She pulled him toward their bedroom. Now come to bed. Let me hold you. Let me remind you that you're more than the worst thing you've ever done. They lay together fully clothed, Min-ho's head on her chest, her fingers stroking through his hair gently. She felt him trembling, this powerful and dangerous man breaking apart in her arms. Thank you, he whispered eventually, his voice raw. For not leaving me. I told you I'm not going anywhere. I meant it. He pulled her closer, and for the first time since he'd walked through the door, Jasmine felt him begin to relax. The immediate crisis was over. They'd survived. But deep down she knew this was just the beginning. There would be more threats, more violence, more moments where Min-ho had to choose between his conscience and her safety. And she would stand by him through all of it. Because that's what love meant in their world, not perfection, but loyalty. Not easy, but worth fighting for. Together they fell asleep as the sun set over Seoul, 2 broken people made whole by each other despite everything. Life settled into a new rhythm over the following weeks. Jasmine returned to work with a reduced, but still present security detail, discreet enough not to draw constant attention. Chin moved back to her own apartment, though she now had Min-ho's people checking on her regularly just in case. The immediate threat had passed, but Jasmine noticed changes in her husband. He was more protective now. More possessive. He called multiple times a day, needed to know her exact location constantly, insisted on approving any changes to her routine or schedule. At night, he held her like she might vanish if he loosened his grip, even in sleep. "You're afraid," Jasmine said one evening as they cooked dinner together, trying to recreate some normalcy. Min-ho's hand stilled on the vegetables he was chopping. "Of what?" "That it's not really over. That someone else will come for me eventually." He set down the knife, his jaw tight with tension. "They will. Maybe not today or next month or even next year. But eventually someone will see you as my weakness and try to exploit it. That's the reality of my world, and there's nothing I can do to change it." "Our world now," she corrected gently. "And I knew that going in. You couldn't have possibly known what that truly meant." Jasmine moved behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Maybe not entirely. But I'm learning. And I'm still here, still choosing you every single day. You shouldn't have to live like this, looking over your shoulder constantly, never feeling completely safe. Stop waiting for me to leave, Min-ho. I'm not going anywhere, no matter how many times you try to push me away for my own good." He turned in her arms, his expression raw and vulnerable. "I love you so much it terrifies me every moment of every day. If something happened to you because of me, it won't. You won't let it." She cupped his face tenderly. "And if something does happen despite your best efforts, at least we'll have had this. Had us. Love worth dying for is also love worth living for." Min-ho kissed her then, deep and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. They made love against the kitchen counter, dinner forgotten, reaffirming their connection in the most primal way possible. Later, as they lay tangled on the couch eating takeout because they'd never finished cooking, Jasmine's phone buzzed with an email notification. She glanced at it absently, then froze completely. "What's wrong?" Min-ho asked immediately, always attuned to her reactions. I got an email from the managing director of my firm. They want to meet with me Monday morning about concerns regarding my association with certain individuals." Min-ho's expression darkened dangerously. "They know you're married to me." "Apparently." Jasmine's stomach churned with dread. "They could fire me, Min-ho. Marketing is my career, my identity, my independence. I can't lose it." "You won't. I'll handle it." "No." She sat up, pulling away from him. "No, you can't just handle everything with money or intimidation or threats. This is my job, my reputation, my career. I need to face this myself." "Jasmine." "I mean it. You can't fight all my battles for me." Anger flashed in his eyes. "So you're just going to walk in there and let them judge you?" "Judge us." "If that's what it takes, yes. I'm not ashamed of our marriage. I won't let you be ashamed either." They stared at each other, tension crackling between them like electricity. This was their first real fight as a married couple, the collision of his need to protect and her need for autonomy and independence. "Fine," Min-ho bit out. "Handle it yourself. But I'm having someone monitor that meeting remotely. If they threaten you in any way, they won't. It's a marketing firm, not a criminal organization." His jaw clenched visibly, but he nodded once, sharply. They finished dinner in uncomfortable silence, both too stubborn to apologize first. That night they slept on opposite sides of the bed for the first time since their wedding, a gap between them that felt like a chasm. Jasmine hated it, hated the distance and coldness. But pride kept her from reaching across that gap. Monday morning, the managing director's office was on the top floor with windows overlooking the entire city. Director Kim was in his 60s, distinguished and cold, flanked by two corporate lawyers that made Jasmine's stomach drop. This was much worse than she'd anticipated. "Mrs. Young," Director Kim's tone was icy, deliberately using her married name. "Thank you for coming. What is this about?" "We've become aware of your recent marriage to Jung Min-ho, a known organized crime figure. As I'm sure you understand, this creates significant complications for our firm and our reputation. My personal life has nothing to do with my job performance or the quality of my work. On the contrary, your association with a criminal enterprise puts our clients, our staff, and our reputation at serious risk." One of the lawyers slid a folder across the desk with practiced efficiency. We've documented several concerning incidents. Armed men on our premises. Suspicious individuals photographing our building. Reports of your clients being questioned by unknown parties about their business with our firm. Jasmine's blood ran cold. She'd known about the security detail, but not the rest of this. I wasn't aware of those incidents. Exactly. You've lost control of the situation completely. Director Kim leaned forward, his expression hard. And our firm cannot afford to be collateral damage in your husband's criminal activities. We're prepared to offer you a generous severance package, the lawyer continued smoothly. On the condition that you resign immediately and sign an NDA regarding your time here and the circumstances of your departure. You're firing me for getting married? We're giving you the opportunity to leave with your dignity and reputation intact. The alternative is a very public termination that will make finding another position in this industry virtually impossible. Rage surged through her, hot and righteous. This is discrimination. I could sue for wrongful termination. You could try, the lawyer said with infuriating calmness. But we have extensive documentation of the security risks your presence creates. No court would side with you against us. Take the severance, Mrs. Young. It's significantly more than generous under the circumstances. Jasmine stared at the folder, her hands shaking with suppressed fury. Everything she'd worked for, her degree, her experience, her carefully built career, being stripped away because she'd fallen in love with the wrong man. I need time to think about this, she managed through gritted teeth. You have until end of business today. After that, we proceed with formal termination proceedings. Director Kim's expression was completely implacable. I'm sorry, Mrs. Young, but the firm must protect its interests and reputation. Jasmine walked out of that office in a daze, barely seeing where she was going. She made it to her car before the tears came, hot, angry tears of frustration and loss and helplessness. Her phone buzzed. Min-ho calling. She couldn't answer. Couldn't find the words to explain that loving him had just cost her everything she'd built independently of him. Instead, she drove, not to the penthouse, but to a park on the outskirts of Seoul where she could think without security cameras and bodyguards, and the overwhelming weight of being Mrs. Jung Min-ho. She sat on a bench overlooking a peaceful pond, watching ducks glide across the water, and faced the truth she'd been avoiding. Her old life was gone, burned away completely. The moment she'd said yes to Min-ho, she'd traded independence for love, safety for freedom, her own identity for his protection. And she wasn't sure she could live with that trade anymore. Hours later, Min-ho found her as the sun began its descent. She heard his footsteps on the path but didn't turn around. You turned off your phone, he said quietly, sitting beside her on the bench. I was terrified something had happened to you. I needed space. Time to think. About leaving me. Jasmine finally looked at him. His expression was carefully controlled, but fear lurked in his eyes, deep and primal. They fired me. Gave me until end of day to resign quietly or they'll destroy my reputation completely and publicly. I know. Jinwoo was monitoring like I promised he would. Of course he was. Bitterness crept into her voice. Because I can't even have a private meeting without your organization knowing every single word that was said. Jasmine. I lost my job, Min-ho. My career. My independence. Everything I built for myself, all because I married you. Tears spilled over again, hot and angry. And the worst part is I knew this might happen. I knew loving you would cost me everything. But I thought I could handle it. That it would be worth it. Can you? His voice was hoarse, breaking. Handle it. She was quiet for a long moment, watching the ducks, feeling the evening breeze on her tear-stained face. I don't know anymore. Min-ho flinched like she'd physically struck him. So you're leaving. I didn't say that. But you're thinking it. I can see it in your face, hear it in your voice. He stood abruptly, pacing away from her with barely contained emotion. I told you from the very beginning what this would be. I warned you repeatedly. But you insisted you could handle it, that you weren't afraid of the consequences. Was that all a lie? No. Jasmine stood too, her own anger flaring to match his. I meant every single word. But it's different actually living it versus imagining it from a distance. I'm losing everything that made me who I am. My job, my friends who are too scared to associate with me now, my freedom to just exist without armed guards following me everywhere. I'm becoming an extension of you instead of my own complete person. So, what do you want me to do? His voice rose with desperation and pain. Let you go? Watch you walk away from me? From us? I want you to understand. Her voice broke completely. I love you. God, I love you so much it physically hurts. But I'm also grieving who I was before you came into my life. And I need you to let me grieve without feeling guilty or without making this about whether I'm going to leave you. Min-ho stared at her, chest heaving with emotion. Then slowly, his expression softened with understanding and regret. I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. I'm so terrified of losing you that I can't even see that you're hurting right now. I'm not leaving, Jasmine whispered, fresh tears streaming down her face. But I need time to figure out who I am in this new life. I need to find purpose beyond just being your wife. He crossed back to her, pulling her into his arms gently. Then we'll find it together. I'll help you however I can. Whatever you want to do, start your own consulting business, teach independently, write, research. I'll support it completely. I'll give you the resources and space to build something that's entirely yours. You do that. I'd do anything for you. Anything at all. He cupped her face, his touch infinitely gentle. You're not an extension of me, Jasmine. You're my partner. My equal. And if I've made you feel otherwise, I'm truly sorry. She collapsed into him, sobbing out weeks of suppressed fear and frustration and loss. He held her through it all, stroking her hair, murmuring reassurances in Korean and English, promising to be better and do better. I don't want the severance package, Jasmine said eventually, when she could speak again. I want to fight this. Make them fire me publicly. Show them I'm not ashamed of loving you or being your wife. Min-ho pulled back slightly, studying her face. That will destroy your reputation in the industry. Make finding work incredibly difficult. Maybe, but at least it'll be on my own terms. At least I'll have stood up for us instead of slinking away like I did something wrong. A smile tugged at his lips, proud and fierce and full of love. That's my wife. So you'll support this even though it makes things harder? Always. We face things together, remember? That was our promise. Jasmine nodded, feeling lighter than she had in days. They'd survived their first real crisis, not external threats, but the internal struggle of merging two lives and identities into one partnership. They drove back to the penthouse together, hands linked across the console, reconnected and stronger for having fought and reconciled. That night they made love slowly, relearning each other, reaffirming their commitment despite everything. I'm sorry about earlier, Min-ho whispered afterward, Jasmine tucked securely against his chest. About trying to control everything. About not seeing that you needed support, not protection. I'm sorry for shutting you out when I was struggling. We're going to fight sometimes. Have moments where this feels impossible and overwhelming. I know. Jasmine traced patterns on his chest lazily. But as long as we keep choosing each other, we'll be okay. Always you, he promised fervently. For the rest of my life, always you. 3 months later, Jasmine's public termination had indeed been messy and highly publicized. The marketing firm tried to paint her as a security risk and liability, but she'd hired excellent lawyers, recommended by Min-ho but paid for with her own savings, who argued discrimination effectively. The case was still ongoing, grinding through the legal system slowly. But public opinion had gradually turned in her favor, seeing her as a woman being punished for love. More importantly, she'd found new purpose and direction. Using Min-ho's connections but her own expertise and vision, She'd started a nonprofit providing business mentorship and marketing education to underprivileged entrepreneurs in Seoul's poorest neighborhoods. It was challenging, fulfilling work that gave her identity back. She was building something meaningful that had nothing to do with being Mrs. Young and everything to do with being herself. She was also pregnant. They'd discovered it 2 weeks ago when persistent nausea finally drove her to the doctor. Seeing those test results, hearing the doctor confirm it, had made everything suddenly, terrifyingly real. Min-ho had stared at the ultrasound image for a full minute, completely speechless and overwhelmed. Then he'd sunk to his knees right there in the doctor's office, pressed his forehead to her still flat stomach, and wept openly. "We're having a baby," he'd whispered, awed and terrified in equal measure. "A baby who will grow up in my world, surrounded by this violence." "Our world," Jasmine had corrected, running her fingers through his hair. "And we'll protect them together. Give them the childhood you never had." Now, as they prepared for a small dinner party with Chan and Jinwoo, Jasmine caught Min-ho watching her with that expression again, wonder mixed with fierce protectiveness. "Stop looking at me like I'm made of glass," she said, arranging flowers in a vase. "I'm pregnant, not dying or fragile. You're carrying my child. That makes you precious beyond any measure I can express. I was already precious beyond measure. You told me so last week." He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms carefully. "True. But now there are 2 of you to protect. 2 people who matter more than anything else in this entire world." Jasmine leaned into him, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her cheek. "Are you scared?" "Terrified," he admitted freely. "What if I'm a terrible father? What if my world corrupts them? What if I can't keep them safe from everything out there?" "Min-ho." She pulled back to look at him directly. "You're going to be an amazing father because you know exactly what it's like to grow up surrounded by violence and pain. And you'll do everything in your power to give our child something better. Something safer." "How do you always know exactly what to say?" "Because I know you." She kissed him softly. "And I love every complicated, dangerous, beautiful part of you." The dinner party was perfect in its simplicity. Jin brought baby gifts despite Jasmine insisting it was way too early. Jinwoo, normally stoic and reserved, offered a rare, genuine smile and heartfelt congratulations. They ate and laughed and celebrated new life amidst people who'd become family through circumstance and choice. After everyone left, Min-ho pulled Jasmine onto the balcony overlooking the city. Seoul glittered below them like scattered diamonds, a city of lights and shadows, beauty and danger intertwined. "I never thought I'd have this," he said quietly, one hand resting protectively on her stomach. "A wife who loves me despite everything. A child on the way. A future that looks like more than just survival and violence. You deserve it all and more. I don't. But I'm selfish enough to keep it anyway." He turned to her, his expression serious and vulnerable. "I want to marry you again. Properly this time, the way you deserve. A real wedding with all our friends and chosen family. Celebration and joy. We're already married. I know. But you deserved more than a rushed ceremony with 5 witnesses because I was terrified someone would try to kill you. You deserve the dress, the celebration, the memories of something beautiful instead of something born from fear." He took her hands in his. "Let me give you that. Let me show everyone how much I love you." Jasmine's throat tightened with emotion. "Okay. Yes. Let's do it properly this time." They planned the wedding for 4 months later, enough time for her to start showing, but not be uncomfortably pregnant. This time they invited everyone. Min-ho's organization, her nonprofit colleagues, Chen's entire friend group, even some of her former students who'd stayed in touch despite the scandal. The ceremony took place in a garden overlooking the Han River, cherry blossoms in full bloom creating a canopy of pink and white. Jasmine wore a custom gown that accommodated her growing belly beautifully, feeling more radiant than she'd ever felt in her life. And when Min-ho turned to watch her walk down the aisle, His expression made her cry before she'd even reached him. Raw emotion. Unconcealed love. Wonder that she was real and actually his. Their vows were longer this time, more complete and honest. They spoke of the challenges they'd faced, the struggles still to come, and the unshakable certainty that they were meant to find each other despite all odds. "You saved me," Min-ho said, his voice thick with barely controlled emotion. Not from danger or enemies or violence, from loneliness. From believing I was meant to face life completely alone. You gave me hope and love and a reason to be better than I was. I promised to spend every day earning the gift of your love and trust. You terrified me, Jasmine said through happy tears. But you also showed me what it means to be truly seen and chosen. You taught me that love isn't about being safe, it's about being brave enough to face whatever comes. And I promise to face every tomorrow with you, no matter what it brings. They kissed as husband and wife for the second time, surrounded by applause and cheers from everyone they loved. The reception lasted until dawn, full of dancing and laughter and pure joy. But Jasmine's favorite moment came later, when she and Min-ho snuck away to a quiet corner of the garden as the sun rose. He placed his hand on her belly, feeling the subtle swell where their child grew. "Boy or girl?" he asked softly. "Does it matter?" "Not even a little bit. As long as they're healthy. And half as brave as their mother," Jasmine added with a smile. "And half as protective as their father," he countered. "God help us if they inherit both our stubborn streaks." Min-ho laughed, the sound warm and genuine and free. They'd come so far from that night in the club, from the woman who didn't run and the man who'd stopped expecting anyone to stay. They'd built something impossible against all odds. Love in the midst of danger. Family in a world of violence. Hope where there should have been only darkness. 7 months later, Jasmine woke to contractions at 4 in the morning. Min-ho was immediately alert, scrambling out of bed while simultaneously barking orders into his phone. "It's happening," she gasped between contractions, gripping her stomach. "The baby's coming." I know. The car is ready. The hospital has been notified. Everything is prepared and ready." But his hands shook as he helped her dress, and she could see the panic in his eyes. The ride to the hospital was a blur of pain and breathing exercises while Min-ho held her hand, whispering encouragements that probably helped him more than her. Labor was long and brutal, 18 excruciating hours. Min-ho stayed by her side through all of it, letting her crush his hand during contractions, whispering that she was strong and amazing, that he loved her more than words could ever express. And finally, after what felt like an eternity of pain, their daughter entered the world with a piercing wail that was the most beautiful sound Jasmine had ever heard. "She's perfect," the doctor said, placing the tiny, screaming bundle on Jasmine's chest. "Absolutely perfect. Congratulations." Jasmine stared at her daughter, their daughter, in absolute wonder. She was beautiful. Tiny and wrinkled and perfect, with a shock of dark hair and Min-ho's eyes already visible even in her newborn face. "Hi, baby girl," Jasmine whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We've been waiting for you." Min-ho stood frozen beside the bed, staring at them both like he couldn't quite believe they were real. Then he reached out with a trembling hand, touching his daughter's tiny fingers with infinite gentleness. She immediately wrapped her hand around his finger, gripping tight with surprising strength. She's... He couldn't finish, completely overcome with emotion. "Ours," Jasmine finished for him softly. "She's ours." He leaned down, kissing Jasmine's forehead and then his daughter's, his whole body shaking with barely contained emotion. "I'm going to protect you both," he vowed fiercely, his voice breaking. "With everything I have and everything I am. Nothing will ever hurt you. I swear it." "I know you will," Jasmine said gently. "But Min-ho, she doesn't need just a bodyguard. She needs a father. Can you be that for her?" He met her eyes, understanding flooding his expression along with determination. "Yes." I promise. I'll be the father I never had. They named her Jiwoo, meaning wisdom and beauty in Korean. And as Min-ho held his daughter for the first time, staring at her with absolute devotion and wonder, Jasmine watched her husband transform once more. Not into something less dangerous. He would always be Jung Min-ho, the man who protected his own with lethal precision and unwavering commitment. But into something more complete. A father. A husband. A man who'd found something infinitely more valuable than power or control. He'd found love worth protecting. Worth living for. Worth becoming better for. 6 weeks later, Jasmine woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of Min-ho's voice speaking softly in Korean. She found him in the nursery, holding Jiwoo against his chest, walking her around the room while whispering promises she couldn't quite hear. "What are you telling her?" Jasmine asked from the doorway. Min-ho turned, smiling softly at being caught. That she's going to grow up safe and loved. That she'll never have to earn affection or prove her worth through violence. That she can be whoever she wants to be. He looked down at their daughter with infinite tenderness. And that her mother is the bravest person I've ever known. The woman who didn't run when everyone else did. The woman who chose love over fear and taught me I was worth choosing. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears as she crossed to them. You're going to spoil her completely, aren't you? Absolutely, and without apology. He kissed Jiwoo's forehead gently. She deserves to know she's loved unconditionally. Something I never knew growing up. Jasmine wrapped her arms around both of them, creating a circle of protection and love. They stood like that as the morning sun painted Seoul in gold and amber, 3 people who'd formed their own family against impossible odds. The world outside was still dangerous. Min-ho's enemies still existed. The violence and darkness of his world hadn't disappeared. But inside this moment, inside their home, they'd created something that darkness couldn't touch. Love that had survived every test. Trust that had been earned through trial and pain. Family that had been chosen and fought for and protected. Jasmine looked at her husband holding their daughter with such careful reverence, and thought back to that night in the club when she'd walked up to a lonely man surrounded by fear and rumors. When she'd chosen possibility over caution. When she'd decided that some risks were worth taking. No regrets? Min-ho asked quietly, reading her mind as he always did. Jasmine looked at their daughter, at the life they'd built together, at the future stretching before them full of challenges and joy in equal measure. Not a single one, she said firmly. Not then, not now, not ever. And she meant it with every fiber of her being. Because loving Jung Min-ho had cost her everything she'd been. But it had given her everything she was meant to become. And that trade, painful as it had been at times, was worth more than she could ever express. They were a family now. Imperfect. Complicated. Built on the ruins of who they'd been before they found each other. But theirs. Completely and irrevocably theirs. And nothing in this world or the next could take that away from them. As Jiwoo stirred in her father's arms and opened her eyes, dark and bright with infinite possibility, Jasmine silently made a promise. Their daughter would grow up knowing what true love looked like. Not the sanitized fairy tale version, but the real thing. Love that fought through fear. Love that chose courage over safety. Love that stood firm when the world tried to tear it apart. Love that was too much for some people to handle, but exactly right for those brave enough to embrace it. And as Seoul awakened below them, the city they'd both chosen as home stretching to the horizon in all its complicated glory, the young family stood together, ready to face whatever came next. Together. Always together. The end. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed this story, share it with someone who needs to hear about love that conquers fear, and subscribe to Seoul K Diary for more tales that celebrate our beautiful diversity. Drop a comment below telling us what you thought about Jasmine and Min-ho's journey. Until next time, keep loving boldly, beautiful people.